Greetings, everyone. This is Dr. Stuart Titus. Welcome to the Wednesday Canaway webinar. It's Wednesday evening here in San Diego, and greetings to you across the country and across the world. I have just returned from Salt Lake City earlier today, and this is where we have our warehouse and production facility. I was so impressed with some of the upgrades that have been made just since my last visit, only about 6 weeks ago. And certainly it's been wonderful to have our video crew doing a little work for us to document some of the progress that we're making. And this is going to be quite exciting. We've had some wonderful opportunities to view some footage of the recent hemp harvest in Europe. Certainly we look forward to providing you with some of the wonderful footage of the amazing hemp crop that we're using to produce our proprietary and amazing products that Canaway's been able to distribute. And certainly with my visit to Utah yesterday, it was really interesting. I was there with Steve Jones, our marketing director, as well as Alex Grabhoff, who's our VP of International Business Development. And certainly it was really interesting to see that during this interview, a basic 3-minute segment with Steve and Alex, in the background, I was watching all the bottles coming through our production facility. And the interview lasted about 3 minutes. And gosh, I turned to our warehouse and the production group, and I mentioned in the last 3 minutes about how many bottles have gone through the production line. And they informed me that about 1,000 bottles had gone through production in that short little 3-minute period of time. They were filled, sealed, labeled, packaged, and ready to go. And certainly, when I'm looking at this array of all these wonderful products that we're producing, I said to myself, gosh, this product may be going to a customer in Sweden. This product might be going to a customer in the US, perhaps in Alabama, perhaps one in Florida, perhaps a customer in Montana, maybe one in Brazil. It's absolutely amazing what we're doing right now. We're making preparations for a second and potentially a third shift to handle the growing demand for not only of our US as well as our European group, and now we're going into some of the Asian markets. So certainly this is quite an exciting time for us, and I would warmly welcome you to the Canaway family, particularly if you're new. To get into this webinar this evening, I generally give a nice presentation, and certainly I lecture both medically as well as to our Canaway brand ambassadors, et cetera. But we are, of course, in the hemp and cannabis industry. Hemp is a derivative of the cannabis plant, as is the cousin, marijuana, which certainly contains the THC, which is a psychoactive cannabinoid. Hemp, on the other hand, does not contain a high concentration of this THC. So it's not going to have a psychoactive effect. It will not get you high, but hemp can be grown for a high concentration of CBD, cannabidiol, the non-psychoactive cannabinoid that confers tremendous health and wellness benefits to individuals. And truly, throughout the history of time in human evolution, cannabis has been used medicinally. We see ancient artifacts dating back to well beyond 8,000 years BC in China regarding cannabis's use. Written documentation of cannabis oils, tinctures, and preparations being used in ancient China and the medicine that was provided to individuals at 2700 BC, and similar records at 2500 BC in ancient Egypt. Certainly, it's been interesting for me to tour some of the cannabis museums that have developed around the world. Barcelona, Spain has a wonderful cannabis museum, and Amsterdam also has a couple of very nice cannabis and hemp museums that are sponsored by a group over in Europe called Sensi Seeds. Sensi Seeds is affiliated with a group called Hemp Flax. They grow hemp in Europe, mostly for its industrial production. The hemp is used to make door panels and dashboards in BMW and Mercedes-Benz automobiles. But Sensi Seeds also involved in the marijuana side, and they basically provide seeds that are used in coffee shops, et cetera, in Amsterdam. And many individuals like to grow their own cannabis. They buy the seeds from Sensi Seeds, et cetera. But those of us who might be going to Amsterdam and the upcoming Canaway event in September 26th, I believe, 26th through 29, might have the occasion to stop by and visit the Sensi Seeds Museum. Very interesting piece of history, and certainly a whole section on hemp, and now with the developing section on CBD as well. So certainly throughout the recorded history of time, cannabis has been used medicinally. Here in the US, in the period from 1850 to 1937, cannabis had a very robust profile in terms of the medical community. Just about every pharmaceutical company had at least one variety of cannabis medicine, and many pharmaceutical companies had several. Eli Lilly, I believe, in its 1935 catalog featured 23 different cannabis-based medicines. And certainly doctors prescribed cannabis widely. It was used quite often for a good number of medical conditions. The US Pharmacopoeia, which is a listing or compendium of all pharmaceutical-based medicines, listed several cannabis-based preparations, as well as the US Dispensary, again, had their own compendium of cannabis-based medicines. So certainly this has a great piece in history, and it was unfortunate that in 1937, the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act put an end to the use of cannabis medicinally, as well as lumping hemp in with marijuana, and thus it became illegal in the US. So all forms of cannabis were technically considered a Schedule I federally controlled substance, but research continued. The National Institutes of Health and the research side of the US government continued to provide funding for those scientists and medical universities to study cannabis and other types of products that may potentially develop into future medicines. And certainly it was very interesting to note that in 1940, Dr. Roger Adams discovered the first known cannabinoid. This was CBD, cannabidiol. So a US scientist, Dr. Adams, discovering CBD in 1940 led to a US government patent that was awarded in 1942. And still, even at that time, and of course, when the doctors in previous years were using cannabis medicinally, they didn't really know about cannabinoids. The science had not evolved to that point. They didn't know about the internal endogenous cannabinoid system and how these cannabinoids, particularly the plant cannabinoids, can supplement it. But nonetheless, this period of time, doctors were prescribing cannabis because it worked. And certainly now, over time, the science has come along to present us with more information as to why and how cannabis interacts with the human body, and particularly our internal endogenous cannabinoid system. So certainly there's some great history here. 1964 going on, Dr. Raphael McCoolum, an Israeli-based researcher, discovered the THC compound, THC being the psychoactive cannabinoid that is produced by the cannabis plant family if it's a marijuana plant. And certainly this has interesting applications for some individuals in terms of pain management potentially. But it's interesting to note that now our society is very well familiar with both CBD as well as THC. And Dr. McCoolum was able to describe the chemical composition of both CBD and THC, which was interesting to note, and the fact that he also discovered that the human body has this internal endogenous cannabinoid system, and he discovered two internal cannabinoids that our bodies naturally produced. Anandamide, I believe this was, early 1991, and then in 1995 he discovered 2-AG, a long chemical name that's abbreviated as 2-AG. These are internal endogenous cannabinoids that our bodies actually produce. So getting into the history and what are these cannabinoids? Certainly cannabinoids are compounds. They're characteristics that are found in the cannabis plant family itself, and these chemical compounds can be extracted and utilized. So medical science today has discovered as much as 146 individual cannabinoids that have been known and identified. And of course, these happen in only rare amounts, very small trace amounts that are produced by the cannabis plant family. Nonetheless, over time, we might be able to help the plant to express these cannabinoids in larger degree. It took us a little bit of engineering to do that with CBD, but we were able to get a high concentration of CBD in a hemp crop going back to 2011. And certainly this allowed us to provide the first nutritional supplement or nutraceutical hemp-based CBD products, which we had on the US and world markets back in the spring of 2012. So these cannabinoids are widely expressed and widely found throughout the cannabis plant family, as are many other compounds, things such as terpenoids. Terpenes give you the characteristic smell or aroma. Terpenes are also known as the essential oils, if you will, and these are widely expressed throughout the cannabis plant. There are things such as flavonoids, the characteristic taste or flavor, but flavonoids are also what makes strawberries red, blueberries blue, or certain types of cannabis purple. And flavonoids also have some interesting potential therapeutic value. Then we have all your plant waxes, chlorophyll, et cetera, that all act synergistically. So the cannabis plant itself is tremendously expressed, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 different chemical compounds and components that all act synergistically when it's in its natural botanical form. And this is what we have been able to provide to you, the general public, in terms of our products. So we'll have a significant number of not only cannabinoids, many in trace form, high concentration of CBD, but also wonderful amounts of these entourage botanicals, your terpenes, your flavonoids, your plant waxes, chlorophyll, all acting synergistically. Now, this internal large self-regulatory system called the endogenous cannabinoid system was discovered in medicine in 1988 and is still far under-recognized for its significant and profound implications for human health and wellness. So this internal endogenous cannabinoid system, as I mentioned, is the largest self-regulatory system in the human body. It governs a huge number, if not every single physiological function that takes place within our bodies to create a balance within us, or what we call homeostasis. The endogenous cannabinoid system has a tremendous number of receptor sites. You can see on the picture on the side of your screen, the green would be your CB1 receptors, widely expressed throughout the brain and spinal column of the central nervous system. Your CB2 receptors, mostly expressed in the gut, the viscera, the internal organs of the body, helping the body to regulate immune function, et cetera. And certainly, we believe that these plant cannabinoids help supplement the body's endogenous internal cannabinoid system. Now, when we had the prohibition of marijuana and hemp, of course, going back to 1937, what's happened over time is that these vital and essential nutrients, these cannabinoids, have been removed and stripped away from our diets. And thus, over time, our overall levels of health and wellness have been on a decline. For example, when I was a child, of course, this was many years ago, back in the 1960s, I never knew of a child anywhere that had epileptic seizure disorders. I never knew of a child with autism. I had one friend who unfortunately had an automobile accident, had a brain injury, and yeah, he had some developmental issues. But my gosh, today, I mean, every neighborhood, you go to a neighborhood and there are probably 3 or 4 children that might have epilepsy and maybe another 3 or 4 that have autism and the rest, and they're on all these medicines and everything. My gosh, it's just terrible to see what's happened over time with the gene pool kind of deteriorating a little bit. And this is because cannabinoids have been removed from our natural diets, and our bodies really need these essential nutrients to help perform and function at the very highest level. In fact, in the medical community, there's a syndrome going around called clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome. Many of our bodies are deficient, and some individuals then develop these very difficult to treat medical conditions. And it's not until some of these patients start to get on plant cannabinoids that they come to a much higher level of overall health and wellness and overcome some of their challenges. So that's part of the science behind this, and certainly we're quite excited about this. Now, the internal endogenous cannabinoid system, I mentioned your CB2 receptors in the gut, the viscera, the internal organs of the body, help the body to regulate its immune function. And the CB1 receptors, interestingly enough, in the brain, spinal column, the central nervous system, are the most widely expressed of all the brain's neurotransmitter receptor sites. So certainly these cannabinoids serve and act as brain food, if you will, and we're quite excited to see that now many individuals are seeing the great health and wellness benefits of cannabis, and particularly of CBD, since we've had our products in the market for the last 7+ years. And now many children, many individuals are giving CBD to their children, not because they're sick or have problems, but because they think long term this is going to help their brain to develop to maybe a little bit better degree. Maybe they'll be a little bit more cognizant, alert, awake. Maybe they'll be a little bit better with their social interaction. They won't have the anxiety. Or maybe this will just help them to develop a higher level of IQ and raise their level of intelligence or their overall level of consciousness or awareness. And certainly what we're seeing is that those who do get on CBD and our products for a good period of time certainly even seem to be reversing aging, if you will. Very, very interesting. So myself personally, I've been taking 50 milligrams of CBD for the past 7+ years, and I've had a tremendous recovery in terms of some health challenges that I've experienced, and I've seen many others with great success stories. Certainly, we're quite excited about our products, in particular our products are, somewhat differentiated from the average CBD products that you'll find on the market today. I think some of our more formal presentations, we'll get into that a little bit more, but certainly we're excited to be part of this industry and leading the way. Now, I mentioned that we were the first company, or I should mention that we were the first company to sell a nutraceutical hemp-based CBD product on US and world markets. And let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit. Going back to the area of about 2011. Well, how about we go back to 2009? Medical Marijuana Inc. was a public company just coming out of the box in its inception and all. And I was a physiotherapist treating patients. I had a wonderful clinical practice for about 20 years in the Carolinas. I was doing a specialized type of electrical stim therapy that was widely used by professional sport and Olympic athletes. I was one of a handful of practitioners doing this with the general public. Many of the top sport athletes that were in contact sport were coming into my office, and they were using cannabis to help control pain, decrease inflammation, help with sleep issues. And I said, my gosh, maybe there is some science to this. And I searched, and sure enough, I found there were a couple of medical cannabis symposiums being given around the world, and one was going to be given in the US. So I attended my first medical cannabis symposium in 2006. My gosh, my eyes were just open to a whole new world, because on the research side of the US government, the National Institutes of Health and other research groups and organizations around the globe were looking at these extracts from the cannabis plant family, these cannabinoids, because of their profound therapeutic significance. The US government, back in 2003, even though cannabis was fully federally illegal as Schedule I federally controlled substance with no medicinal use, according to the law enforcement side of the government, on the research side of the government, nothing could have been further from the truth. Witness this 2003 U.S. government patent number 6630507 titled Cannabinoids as Antioxidants and Neuroprotectants. This patent describes a wide range of therapeutic benefit. On the antioxidant, anti-inflammatory side, the research showed that CBD was perhaps the most, or the cannabinoids were perhaps the most profound antioxidant compound and substance known to man, much stronger than vitamin C or vitamin E. And certainly we do see that some components of the cannabis plant, which are currently in very small proportion, what are called cannaflavin A, cannaflavin B, cannaflavin C, have been shown to have 30 times the anti-inflammatory properties of aspirin. And then the other side of the government patent, on the neuroprotective side, research showed great potential benefit for your neurodegenerative patients, your Alzheimer's, your Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, PTSD patients. And of course now, last year, 2018, the FDA awarded approval on a CBD-based form of medicine called Epidiolex. This is designed to treat children with rare types of epileptic seizure disorders that are resistant to pharmaceutical medication. And certainly now we're seeing many parents with autism children showing some benefit by using cannabis as well as by using CBD. So with all this information, we thought that, my gosh, CBD was an interesting compound, even though it was discovered in 1940 by Dr. Adams. the progressive marijuana growers back in the 1960s, when we had kind of a cultural revolution, if you will, particularly here in the US. We had the Beatles and rock and roll music. We had the war in Vietnam. All the Vietnam protesters were cannabis users, et cetera. And so many of the progressive marijuana growers thought, gee, let's try to grow a high concentration CBD in a marijuana crop. Maybe we could get an effect if you smoke a cannabis cigarette, or a joint as it was called, that you might have some type of an effect. Well, the marijuana growers did this. They got a high concentration CBD in a marijuana joint, smoked it. There was absolutely no effect. And so CBD became known as the hippie's disappointment. It was considered totally a worthless compound. No one paid any attention to it. Everyone thought it was trash, except for us. We were a group of enterprising entrepreneurs in California. We'd done our study and research. The US government patent mentioned that the non-psychoactive cannabinoids, such as cannabidiol, CBD, were far preferable to use therapeutically because they don't confer the intoxicating side effects that cannabis, when it's grown for marijuana, will confer to individuals and patients. So many people are very sensitive to THC, 2 or 3 milligrams, and boy, they are sound asleep for 8 hours. Many people, myself included, take 50 milligrams of CBD daily, 50 milligrams, say, in the morning. We can drive a car, we're awake, we're alert, we're cognizant, we're able to handle our lives. And certainly this represents a kind of a differentiation between CBD and THC, that people can take a very high dose. In fact, the pharmaceutical group is giving between 400 and 700 milligrams of CBD daily to young children. 400 to 700 milligrams of THC, my gosh, that might last a patient 5 years. So to give you a relative balance of what THC and CBD is all about. Anyway, we thought that if we did something a little bit different, instead of smoking your cannabis to get your CBD, if we were to develop finished products, oils, tinctures, various preparations, where maybe patients could get 25 to 50 milligrams of CBD daily, there might be some therapeutic value to this. We never knew that we'd ever sell $1 worth of product, but we thought we'd roll the dice, invest millions of dollars, and go ahead and try to provide the first nutraceutical hemp-based CBD products on US and world markets. We had to develop specialty harvesters. This picture here is our first harvesting machine that we developed back in 2011. It's interesting because the hemp crop and hemp itself was used for rope and textile, and is very strong, has a tremendous integrity. So if you take a normal harvester to harvest wheat or corn or what have you, you're just going to wind up with those blades within the first pass down the field of a hemp crop. You're going to wind up with those blades being all chopped and chewed up. So you have to develop specialty blades, specialty equipment and all. I think you see, if you'll see pictures of the current harvesting equipment today, it has come a long way from when we first developed this, and we put millions of dollars just into developing the harvesting equipment. And then once we harvested our crop, and it took us about 4 years of successive crop cycles and rotation, but each year we got a successively higher and higher amount of CBD in the hemp crop. By 2011, we thought we had enough CBD in the hemp to be potentially useful, went ahead and did our harvest, and then took our hemp over to an extraction facility. In a similar process where they make olive oil from olives, we got a CBD-rich hemp oil from our hemp crop, and then we had to develop special import-export regulations to take this CBD-rich hemp oil from Europe into the US. Fortunately, in the US, we'd already had some litigation regarding hemp food products, and hemp food products were fully legal in the United States. Hemp seed oil, hemp protein powder products were being sold throughout the US through health food stores, and certainly we found a way to piggyback on the hemp food regulation and bring this CBD-rich hemp oil into the US, where we then worked it to develop our finished and final products. And this was a great accomplishment for us. So our original products had three generations, if you will. the raw juice, or the raw extract, if you will, this CBD-rich hemp oil, the crude oil, if you will, is a thick, nasty, kind of paste-like substance. And it took us several months once we had it here in the US to figure out how to make our finished products. So October of 2011, we had our first CBD-rich hemp oil in the US. It took us till May of 2012 to actually produce a product and have it available on US markets. So this was a process, again, of trying to figure out how to take this raw extract and make something useful out of it. Well, the first product we developed really contained this raw extract, the CBD, and in this particular form, your CBD is in an acid form. And this is our green product. So the CBD here contains a very high concentration of what's called cannabidiolic acid, or it's abbreviated CBD-A. And this particular product contains about 10% CBD. Since it has a very strong acid or an acidic taste, it wasn't a great product. You have to really be a health food aficionado, someone who's very tolerant of things such as wheatgrass juice, to be able to utilize this product. But we found if we did a little processing, and particularly found this nice decarboxylation process that would turn all the acids into a more active form, that we could produce a product that we called our blue formulation. So this decarboxylation process just slightly changes the chemical arrangement, but it also takes away the acidic taste. Here, we also lose some of the plant material, so we actually wind up with a little bit higher concentration of CBD. Here, a 17% concentration of CBD. And then in our lab facilities, we thought we could do maybe one better. And now we took this blue formulation and took it to a special device called a thin film or white film distillation piece of equipment. And this distillation process, again, removes a little bit more of the plant material, and thus the color changes from a darkish brown, very green, deep brown type of product into something a little bit more golden and has a little bit more of consistency such as honey. So again, by taking away some of the plant material, we're now concentrating the CBD even higher to 24%. So our green was a 10% concentration of CBD, our blue was 17%, and our gold product was 24%. This is a product we now have available through Canaway, or Canaway Gold oral applicators available in the US. And certainly this has a very nice 24% concentration of CBD. Many people enjoy that product. Now, many interesting concepts in cannabis science. Certainly one of them is called the entourage effect. Earlier, I mentioned to you how the hemp plant that I'm pictured here with contains anywhere from 500 to 1,000 different chemical components, all your cannabinoids in trace amount. High concentration of CBD, but also contains terpenoids, flavonoids, your plant waxes, chlorophyll, etc. And these, again, all act synergistically to produce this wonderful magnified effect called the entourage effect. So you have about 1,000 different chemical components. Now, what happens with pharmaceutical development? Well, you take one or possibly two active ingredients, and that's what you use for your formula. You standardize it, you have it available on markets. And yes, there is a certain effect to this, but when you take out these particular components and you isolate them, you refine them, you process them, and many times these are even synthetic or semi-synthetic forms of the original plant material, because here in the US everything needs to be standardized according to some FDA protocol. But what you do is not only do you lose all these entourage botanicals, but you also lose a lot of the interesting plant effects. It's really interesting that the hemp plant, like you take the plant I'm pictured with here on the screen, and this plant, a chemical engineer from upstate New York, Clarkson University, Dr. David Mitlin, has developed a technology to capture some of these etheric properties of hemp. And it turns out that hemp is extremely electrically conductive. And so Dr. Mitlin has been able to make hemp batteries, and particularly hemp supercapacitors, and that will be able to store energy. And here, many potential applications. For example, the current Tesla automobile, electric car, you run for about 200 miles, and basically you have to stop, charge it up overnight for 8 hours. All of a sudden, you got a full battery. you go for another 200 miles. Well, with these supercapacitors that can be developed out of hemp, you can go to a filling station, get a quick 20-second charge, boom, your battery's back to full, you're on the road for another 200 miles. Or if you have solar panels today, for example, it's kind of a use it or lose it scenario. Basically, you capture the power, it's stored into a battery, and you basically have about 20 or 24 hours to utilize that because it's all going to start to dissipate. Well, if you could store this power in a hemp battery or a supercapacitor, if you will, that might last you a full week. So if you only have one day of sun, you might be able to power your whole house for the whole week just from that one day worth of sun. So interestingly enough, these etheric properties, we believe, are transformed or transferred in a good degree over to some of our products because we utilize minimal processing. I guess the best way to describe it might be some epileptic seizure children. The parents can see that their seizure's about to come on. What they do is they go to the refrigerator, grab a little drop of CBD oil, place it at the child's tongue, and immediately that seizure stops right in its tracks. And this is potentially because of the electrical properties of hemp that interact with our body's internal communication network system. And certainly we're looking to do more research to verify this out. But when you take the refined, isolated, semi-synthetic kind of pharmaceutically developed version, you don't really have these etheric properties. It's just kind of an inert substance and compound that, yes, has some benefit, but many times we see people preferring the more natural botanical form. Another comparison might be on the marijuana side. Back in 1985, interestingly enough, here in the US, a synthetic form of THC was actually FDA approved. This compound was called Marinol. It's been 20 years plus past its inception, and of course the patent has expired. Now there's a generic version called dronabinol, and patients can go to their doctor, get a prescription for Marinol, dronabinol, synthetic form of THC, and utilize that. But patients prefer to go to the dispensary, pay cash out of pocket to get natural botanical cannabis because it's going to work so much better for them and doesn't confer any of the unwanted, unnecessary side effects that Marinol and dronabinol are known for. So there's kind of a comparison of what happens with the natural botanical portion versus a pharmaceutically developed portion. And certainly we're hopeful of the US FDA carving out a very nice pathway for the natural botanical portion of CBD to be considered a dietary supplement in the US, and this will contrast very nicely with the pharmaceutically developed version. Many people take 50 milligrams of CBD daily to support their internal endogenous cannabinoid system. Young children taking 400 to 700 milligrams of CBD daily on the pharmaceutically developed side for their therapeutic needs. So right there you're seeing the kind of the balance between dietary supplement and pharmaceutical development. Now, certainly our product, we kind of call it the real McCoy, if you will, because it's the original product, the first hemp-based CBD product to be on US and world markets. We still are very much steeped in this tradition of providing wonderful products to people in the US and around the globe. We keep with some of our original processes and formulations. We keep with some of our original suppliers because we know that these people have been growing hemp for decades, if not generations. They're expert at it. The soil is very well adapted and amenable to a hemp crop. It's certainly gone through several different cycles of weather and the rest, and certainly each year produces a wonderful hemp crop with a very high, consistent amount of CBD with a very low amount of THC. Now, here in the US, of course, hemp has been legalized with the 2018 Farm Bill. Next year, 2020, the first legal crop will be planted under USDA, US Department of Agricultural supervision. And certainly we're excited about bringing back this wonderful industrial crop that was really the staple of the first crop brought over to America by European settlers. In fact, my ancestors with them came over on the Mayflower back in 1620. They brought buckets full of hemp seed, and hemp was really planted as the first agricultural crop here in the US, dating back to that period of time. But now, since hemp is a kind of a new industrial crop that really hasn't been formally planted in 80 plus years, certainly it's going to take a while for the soil and the conditions to adjust and to have a consistent crop every year. And we're certainly excited about this, but nonetheless, in various parts of the country, we think some of this hemp might grow hot, if you will. So the THC might be a little bit higher than the 0.3% that the federal government will allow for distinguishing a hemp versus a marijuana plant. So certainly there are a lot of things to be worked out here in the U.S. We're excited about sourcing from the U.S. when the time comes right. We have this beautiful production facility up in Utah. I couldn't be more excited about some of the growth there. Certainly to be able to provide American consumers with some American hemp CBD products over time, I think will be great. But for the moment, we have had some wonderful success. People have seen significant improvements in their level of health and wellness from the European hemp that we've been able to source, and we continue to work with our original suppliers to provide these wonderful products for us. Now, of course, I mentioned earlier, I've had some severe health challenges back when I was first involved with the company in this industry, particularly when I moved out to San Diego in 2011 to become involved with the company on a full-time basis, because when I heard of the company's plans to develop a nutraceutical hemp-based CBD product, which could be available to consumers around the U.S. and potentially around the world, I was all in. I moved out here full-time to take part in this. Of course, I invested a good deal of money, time, and effort to provide the funding to get this off the ground. And I just thought from the research that I had done that the non-psychoactive hemp-based CBD product might rival vitamin C. But interestingly enough, at the same time, I was experiencing some severe health challenges with a nerve-related disorder. I was one of the first people to take hemp CBD product. Certainly, it was amazing right from the very first night. I had an amazing sleep, and certainly right then, my healing process started. It took me about 2 years fully from starting to take CBD to when I had experienced a tremendous recovery, and now I'm able to hold down a CEO position. I travel the world, lecture, etc. And if you have seen me back in 2011, you would never have thought that would have been possible. So I owe quite a lot to CBD, and it's so exciting for me to go to many of these events around the globe to meet other people who've experienced significant benefit with CBD products. Certainly, we're quite excited about what we've been able to offer individuals in countries around the world. I mean, we have operations in Brazil, Mexico, Paraguay, and Argentina, certainly over in the European communities. Now we're expanding over to Japan, and certainly I'm looking forward to being over in Japan middle of October. And we have some wonderful events coming up in the very near term here. So the remainder of 2019, here's some of our wonderful showcase events in New York, the metropolitan New York area, New England, Saturday, September 21st. We're going to have a nice event. I believe this has been moved from Rybrook to Stamford, Connecticut. And certainly those on the East Coast, you might find some wonderful education, some information. You'll be able to talk with some of our leaders, people who have been with us through the years and have seen the growth in the industry, the growth in the company. Our Canaway president, Brad Tales, will be there to help talk about some of the compensation plan, as well as some of the science, the research that's been going on, some of the new products that we're developing, and many other wonderful Canaway brand ambassadors who've been with us for quite a while will be at Stamford, Connecticut. Now, coming up in California, in October 26th, Canaway Academy will have a one-day event in Anaheim, California. I'm looking forward to being there myself personally. Certainly should be a wonderful event for us. I believe the Canaway executive team, Blake Schrader and his group, have been putting together some special products that might be launched and announced at this time. So certainly, if you're on the West Coast, or if you can make it out to Anaheim, California, no matter where you are in the world, I think you will find a one-day wonderful use of time here. Actually, this is a 3-day event now. It's going to be October 25th through 27th, because I believe we have so much to talk about in the way of new products. And certainly I'm very excited to be able to be there on a personal basis, and we'll look forward to greeting each and every one of you who are there at that time. Now, for those of you in Europe, coming up towards the end of the month here, September 26th through 29, we have a wonderful event in Amsterdam. And I'm certainly excited to personally be able to go to the European community and welcome all of the brand ambassadors to our event. We're looking very much forward to being in Amsterdam. It's a beautiful city in the world, and certainly couldn't be happier with all the growth and success that we've been able to generate. And the momentum, the energy, the enthusiasm, the new back office. So we've got a lot of the bugs worked out now. So we're really on a tear. And I think the new products that will be coming into the Canaway family of companies here over the next couple of years, I really think is going to totally separate us out from every other group in the industry. I couldn't be more proud to work with this wonderful team. Gosh, the job that Blake Schrader and his group have done. We have a wonderful marketing director, Steve Jones. I just had the opportunity to spend a good day with him yesterday in Utah. Wow, am I impressed with some of the things we have going on. And of course, we had a chance to brainstorm over dinner last night, and be very interesting to see what's going to happen in terms of study and research that we might be able to actually provide some additional information of the how and why this CBD is affecting the human body for and people to improve their levels of health and wellness. I also spent a little bit of time with Alex Grandpa. Amazing job what we're doing in terms of international markets and expansion. Certainly couldn't be more happy to be involved with Canaway at this time. Believe me, if I was not doing this current job that I have right now, the first thing I would do is run to my nearest Canaway distributor and say, guys, can you sign me up as a Canaway brand ambassador? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure to be with you this evening from San Diego, California. I wish you all wonderful health, wellness, prosperity, and certainly thank you so very kindly for your attention this evening on the Canaway Network. We will look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you again for attending.